that. So definitely take notes, but you don't have to take notes furiously because this information will be available.
Yes, so everything that you're seeing, all the slides and the video will be made available to you tomorrow on our website, and we'll send out links for those. So if you don't catch them all now, don't worry about it. Yeah. And then like we've done in our previous meetings, if you've joined us before, please put any questions you have in the chat. We will aggregate them and then ask them at the end. So if you have anything that comes up during the presentation, please throw them in there. And let's see. All right, so an agenda for what we're going to be going over today. We'll talk about a little bit about what we've done so far in the 2 months exactly since we've had our kickoff meeting. We'll talk about the ballot timeline. We'll talk about the scintillating topic of naked ballots, how to complete and return your mail-in ballot, early voting locations and drop boxes, how we're going to mobilize voters, what our plans are for the final 6 weeks. We'll go over resources, links, and next steps, and then we will do questions at that point. So our work today, let's see. So what we've done so far, in the last 2 months since we had our kickoff meeting, we've talked with contacted over 28,000 voters in Fairmount, Brewerytown, Center City, with a combination of phone, mail, text, etc. Of those people that we've contacted, over 7,700 have requested mail-in ballots, and as on average, those regions have applied for over 50% of the regions have applied for mail-in ballots. So we're not responsible for all of these requests, but we feel confident that our efforts and the efforts of our volunteers have contributed to those high application rates. The reason it's good, takes a huge amount of pressure off the election or the polling places on election day. And then the flip side of that is we've got half these neighborhoods applied. We have to talk to every one of those people and make sure they return, fill out, and properly submit their ballots. So that's what's called the chase, and we are going to talk about that towards the end of the presentation. And now Carol is going to take over and talk about the ballot timeline. Oh, hang on. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to start off talking about the ballot timeline. Everybody wants to know, when are they going to be able to receive their ballot? So in Philly, the Board of Elections waited to print the ballots until the Supreme Court decision that came out last Thursday. We were waiting to see who would be on the ballot before we printed the ballot here in Philly. So on Thursday, we found out more about what the ballot would look like. The Green Party candidate was removed from the ballot. And now ballots are being printed. Voters should receive them by the end of the month. If voters don't have them by October 10th, my birthday, call our hotline, 267-403-3401. And the reason I say call our hotline, you're welcome to try calling the Board of Elections or the Department of State, but you might sit online for 45 minutes or you just might not have anybody answer your call. What we do is I will take your information. I make daily calls to the city commissioner's office, Donna Fitzpatrick, who is amazing, and her cousin might be on here too. Hi. I talk to her almost every day, and I advocate for voters. When I talk to her, I can find out what happened to your ballot, what's the status of it, and what are the next steps that should be taken now. So if you know of somebody who has not received their ballot by October 10th, give them our hotline, have them call us. We will help them. Okay, so last week, the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, issued a number of rulings that were incredibly expansive to voter rights and for people being able to access the ballot. The biggest decision on the other side that really limits voters' rights and we have to work hard to inform people about is naked ballots. This is going to be a big informational push. If there's one thing that you walk away from here tonight, or understanding what a naked ballot is. A naked ballot is a ballot, paper ballot, that is not inserted in the inner secrecy envelope. So it's naked, it has no clothes. It will not be counted. Your vote will not be counted. Your ballot will not be counted unless it is received inside the inner secrecy envelope. This is a big deal. I saw that Lisa Deely wrote a letter today to representatives trying to get them to reverse this. I wouldn't hold our breaths. We just need to move ahead with the information that we have now. So when somebody gets their ballot mailed to them, you see the envelope that was mailed to you that you received in the mail. And then when you open it up, there are two other kinds of envelopes in there. One is a bigger envelope that's called the declaration envelope. And that's where you see room to sign your name. The smaller of the two envelopes has printed on it official election ballot. That is the inner secrecy envelope. You must make sure that everybody knows if you want your vote to count, that paper ballot must go in the inner secrecy envelope. Okay, so how to complete a mail-in ballot. As we said, ballots are being printed and they're being sent, and we want to communicate to people what to expect when their ballot arrives, how to complete it, and how to return it. So we are recommending for everybody to vote the whole ballot. So it's really tempting to just like, oh, it's a presidential election, I'll just mark off for the president. Read down the whole ballot and make selections for the entire ballot. All races are important, not just the top of the ballot. You need to use a black or blue pen only and not change in between. Use the same pen. I mean, if you run out of ink, you run out of ink and you get another pen that looks like it and keep going, that's fine. But use black or blue ink. Fill in the bubble completely. So I don't know, whoever else is from the era of like when you had to take tests and fill in the little bubble, fill in the bubble completely. Don't use an X mark or a check mark, fill in the whole bubble. Do not write on the inner secrecy envelope. So if you're like, I don't know, taking notes on who you're going to vote for or jotting down names, do not do it on the inner secrecy envelope. That will invalidate it. As we said on the previous slide, make sure that you place your ballot in your inner secrecy envelope. So no naked ballots. You want to be sure that you sign and date the voter declaration on the outside of the envelope. There is a barcode sticker that will be on that envelope. Make sure you do not mark the barcode. You need to preserve that, but look at the name that is written where the barcode is. That is how you should sign your name. So meaning, my name, for voter registration purposes, I use my middle name. My middle name is Lynn. So I'm going to sign Carol Lynn Rosenthal. That is how the sticker will be printed. I shouldn't sign Carol Rosenthal. I shouldn't sign Carol L. Rosenthal. I'm going to sign my name as it is on that barcode sticker. Okay. Another great news for voting rights that happened last week, thanks to the League of Women Voters and the Urban League of Philadelphia, or I'm sorry, it was the Urban League of Pittsburgh. So they threatened a lawsuit against the Department of State, and in response, the Department of State issued guidance around signature matching. And the guidance says that Pennsylvania County boards of elections can no longer reject a ballot solely based on an election official's belief that a signature does not match the signature in the voter's file. So if you are concerned that your signature is not the same as when you registered to vote 20 years ago. And it's different. If you've injured your hand, if you've had surgery, if you have arthritis, if your signature changes from year to year, as many of ours do, if you don't remember what your signature looked like then, don't freak out. It is okay. No one is going to be like dissecting your signature and throwing your ballot out solely based on that. Okay. All right, next we're talking about how to return your ballot. So we are urging everybody to return their ballots within 24 hours of receiving them. We do not want to wait until right before Election Day and flood the Board of Elections with a sudden onslaught of ballots. We want them to come in as soon as you receive it. And we are strongly urging every voter who receives a mail-in ballot to return them at an early voting site or at a drop box. We're going to go over early voting sites and drop boxes later, but we really urge you, if you are able to return it via those methods. If you can't, then you can, if you're not able to get to or utilize an early voting site or drop box, you can use the US Postal Service. You can take it to a mailbox. You can take it to a post office. Now, there have been some changes to the law around when it must be postmarked and when it must arrive. So a ballot must be postmarked by November 3rd. However, the postmark only counts if it is received at the Board of Elections no later than November 6th. So even if it's postmarked November 3rd, but it gets there November 7th or November 8th, it will not be counted. So essentially, I feel like postmarks really don't count. I mean, they might count if you fit into that like 3-day leeway window, and there will be many ballots that do, but I certainly would not count on a postmark. If it is November 2nd or November 3rd and you have not dropped your ballot in the mail, I would say do everything you possibly can to drop it at a drop box or an early voting site. Also, ballots cannot be returned at polling locations on Election Day. All right, so early voting locations. So this information is brand new. I've tried to piece it all together in the last 2 days. There are going to be questions you'll have that I won't know the answer to, but I'll try to get the answer. We can follow up with emails to questions that I didn't have the answers to information that I don't know or information that just hasn't been decided upon yet, because this is all really new. So the Board of Elections will have satellite offices. There will be 17 of them throughout Philly. Yes, there is one last step that needs to be taken on Wednesday at a meeting of the Board of Elections. They need to officially vote on this, but it is 99.9% sure that we will have satellite locations, 17 of them throughout Philly. They will be open 7 days a week, which is incredible. The hours of operation are going to be Monday through Thursday from 11:30 to 6:30, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 9:30 to 4:30. And it is very likely that they will be open on October 12th, Indigenous Peoples Columbus Day. It's likely that they will be open that day. Okay, so Matt made a website today. It is phillyearlyvoting.com. It has a map of all of the sites, the locations, and we'll be adding some more information to it as time goes on. But we really want this to be a shareable resource. Sometimes information that is put on the Board of Elections site or the Department of State site, you really have to like click through a ton to find the right document. So we wanted to create a website that everybody in the city can utilize to figure out where they're going. So please feel free to share this widely. If you work with another organization, if you're on social media, just like make it your own. Have that be where you send people to figure out where they need to go for an early voting site. Okay, So here are some things to expect when you go to an early voting location. Face masks will be required. Why are they required at polling locations and not here? Because this is not a polling location. This is a Board of Elections office. It's a city office. And face masks will be required, and they will be handing out face masks there. Social distancing will be enforced. I put a little asterisk next to that. How will they enforce it? How well will they enforce it? I don't know, but it is definitely on their mind, and they want to enforce social distancing. They will have hand sanitizer. They will have pens for each new voter. And depending on the space and depending on each site, they may be able to have chairs to accommodate voters who are waiting. We don't really know what to anticipate as far as how long the lines will be, how long it takes to go in and out of the space. And we do want to make sure that seniors or folks who are not able to stand do have a place to sit. We don't know that every location will be accommodating that. I do know that the City Hall location will. The scoop that I found out about City Hall, so it is in room 140 of City Hall, and the entrance will be the south entrance, the south gate to City Hall near the Cato statue. That is where you will go, through that entrance. Other entrances will be locked. There's still, most of the building is only accessible by appointment because of COVID precautions. So if you are going to the City Hall location, which could be convenient for a lot of people if they work near there to go during the day, you're going to want to enter in the south gate. So, as I mentioned, these are Board of Elections satellite offices. They are not polling locations. So a couple things about that. That means that they are staffed by paid, permanent, full-time workers who are Board of Elections workers. They're not staffed by poll workers. So if you signed up to be a poll worker, you will not be placed at an early voting site. There are no jobs available as poll workers at these voting sites because it is not a polling location. It is a satellite office. So the staff there are trained and all the time use the SURE database, and that is the state election database. There will be terminals there that they use to look up your voter information. There will not be poll books. Anybody can go to any of the 17 locations. So it would be impossible to have a poll book with like 900,000 voters in it and look you up in a poll book. They're not doing that. They will have these SURE terminal databases, and they anticipate that each location will have the same number of terminals and the same number of staff. So thus far, from what we know, there is no recommendation like, go to this one because it's going to have a lot more capacity. In my mind, it's almost all of them are at schools, except there's one at the LeCour Center at Temple, and I'm like, that place is huge. Maybe it'll have way more capacity. From what I know now, they will all have the equal capacity to process voters. If that changes over time, we will certainly let you know. So, early voting sites, or Board of Elections satellite offices, call them what you will, they will be open starting Tuesday, September 29th through November 3rd. However, you cannot complete every kind of service during that entire period of time. You will be able to go and register to vote at an early voting site. And you will be able to do that from the day it opens until October 19th. You won't be able to do it until November 3rd because October 19th is the deadline for voter registration. So anybody can walk in and register to vote, and you don't need ID in order to register to vote. You can do it there, but only until October 19th. You can also do in-person early voting. Sorry, that's our voter hotline. For those of you who make phone calls and tell people to call the hotline, someone just did. Okay. So in-person early voting, we're going to go over this in detail. It is akin to applying for and voting a mail-in ballot. The deadline for requesting a mail-in ballot is October 27th. So the in-person early voting services will only go till October 27th. So that's a good thing to remember, because when you look at when will the sites be open, they'll be open till November 3rd. That doesn't mean you can vote there till November 3rd. You can only vote there until October 27th. And then it will also be a location to drop off your mail-in ballots. And that service will be available through Election Day. So the kind of voting that can happen there will be no machines to vote on. It's only voting on paper ballots. So this is actually not new. The kind of service that they're providing is the service that they always provide at the Board of Elections and City Hall up through November 3rd for people who need emergency absentee ballots and you need to go in and request a ballot. They're used to doing this. This is actually not a new process. This staff has done this, does this, knows how to complete this process. So you will not be voting on a machine. What you'll be doing is completing a paper application. I know I have a paper application here somewhere. That's what I'm looking around for. Okay, so this is a paper application for a mail-in ballot. So each voter who wants to vote in person will be given one of these at the early voting location and will complete it. It's an incredibly simple form. It asks for your name, your date of birth, your phone number. If you want to, you don't even have to give your phone number and email, your address, and then either your PennDOT and driver's license number or the last 4 digits of your social security number. This is not a voter ID requirement. You actually don't have to show this ID. You just need to have the numbers of your PennDOT ID, driver's license, or last 4 of your social security number. Why? This is how they match who you are in the database. And they have, they'll either have your signature on record through your PennDOT ID and driver's license, or they will be able to look you up by the last 4 of your social security and determine that you are in the system and are registered to vote. So I know, like, our hotline spends a lot of time helping voters who's like, the name on your application for a mail-in ballot didn't match your name on your voter registration. And so we have to ask a lot of questions of staff down at the Board of Election to figure out how to rectify this and remedy this. That will all happen in person at this one-stop location, which is pretty amazing. So, so you'll fill out the form, you'll turn it in. Your ballot and envelope will be printed for you right then and there and given to you right then and there. It will look the same as a mail-in ballot. And a voter can either take it, complete it there, and turn it in there, or take it home and return it later, which we hope you don't do, because if you've gone to an early voting location, we hope that you actually are able to complete your vote. So that is what to anticipate when you go to an early voting site. So what happens to your ballot after that? Ballots are delivered to a central processing location, much the same way if a drop box was being collected. Your ballot in its envelope with the barcode on it will go to a central processing location. It will be in the chain of the Board of Elections the entire time. It will be taken to the central processing location where it will be scanned, just as a mail-in ballot would be, and you'll be able to track that ballot the same way you would a mail-in ballot. So votespa.com/mail ballot status. So you will see once it has reached the processing location and been scanned, you will see an update when you look yourself up on votespa.com. Don't freak out if you have voted that day and you don't see that it has changed. I recall in the primary when they got like stacks and stacks and stacks in a day, it might take 24 hours for them to scan it even after it's reached the processing location. So give it a little time. There's a huge, huge volume of these that are being processed. Okay, ballot drop boxes. Ballot drop boxes were deemed legal by the state Supreme Court on Thursday. We got the go-ahead that they can be utilized by counties if they wish to. We don't have any information yet from Philadelphia as to whether there will be drop boxes, where they would be located. I think that information will be coming soon. So we will keep you updated on that. And I think we'll probably also add the Dropbox locations to that website that Matt made today, the early voting website. One reason why I'm really rooting for Dropboxes is I'm high risk for COVID, so I don't want to go inside an early voting location. I would really appreciate being able to drop my ballot off, not through the US mail, but through an outside drop box. So fingers crossed, that will be happening soon. Okay, ballot counting. So a lot of people are very freaked out about how we're going to count ballots in time. And I'll tell you some things that have changed since the primary. It's still not going to make ballot, we're still not going to have results on election night. That's not going to happen. We have close to 2 million people in the state who have already requested mail-in ballots. But a lot has changed to improve the speed and efficiency with which ballots are going to be counted in Philadelphia. So you may have heard the news that the Board of Elections got a $10 million grant. $5 million of that was used for machinery for sorting and opening ballots. We did not have that in the primary. We literally had individual people with like old-fashioned letter openers opening each ballot. We will have machines for that now. We have purchased more scanners. We had very few scanners in the primary. We will have many more scanners. Scanning actually takes very little time. It's all of the work before of the sorting and opening. That takes a lot longer than scanning does. So some of that $10 million grant was also used to hire extra staff. So the Board of Elections will be much better staffed as far as their department that's going to be counting. The work will happen 24 hours a day. That wasn't the case in the primary. They were not doing 24-hour-a-day counting. There will now be 3 shifts in which workers will be counting. Also, just so you know, we're not a county that uses volunteers to count ballots. Some other counties might, but we don't. It's all paid staff. So pre-canvassing, that is everything that happens to a ballot between when it's scanned and arrived and then when the ballot when the barcode's scanned on your envelope, and then when the ballot is processed, all the steps in between processing before it goes into the scanner that will count your vote, all of those steps are called pre-canvassing. And in the primary, we did not start pre-canvassing, let alone counting, until Wednesday morning. We will now start it, and we are legally allowed to do so, at 7 a.m. on election day. So we will have 24 more hours than we did the last time. And pending legislation, we might have even more time to do the pre-canvass. So I believe that Republicans have suggested 3 days to do pre-canvass. And I think Democrats have suggested maybe 3 weeks, I think, to do the pre-canvass. That's quite a difference. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. But so we're getting an extra 24 hours. We have a lot more staff. We have a lot of machinery to take care of what staff we're doing. They're going to be working around the clock. And we will have fingers crossed, more time beforehand to do the pre-canvassing, which is the time-consuming part of it. So a lot of people are really concerned about what happens if we don't know on election night. I think we can all agree that it's going to take longer than 24 hours for results to come in. That is just the new normal. And we have to adjust our expectations. We know, like, we can see the writing on the wall of what is going to happen in response to count time. So machine results, votes that happen on machine, those are going to be counted first. They're quick, it's much easier, and we know that there will be more of these votes cast in Republican areas because Republicans have requested fewer mail-in ballots. We know that paper ballots take longer to count than machine votes, and we know that Democrats have requested way more paper ballots. So we can already anticipate that what's going to happen over time is a blue shift, meaning the first votes that come in quickly are probably going to be from red areas. And then as the mail-in ballots are started to be counted, they're going to be coming in from bluer areas. So that's the blue shift. We anticipate that the blue shift is what's going to likely trigger accusations of fraud or inaccuracy. We thought that it looked like this on election night. How can it look like this 24, 72, 48 hours later? So we know this. I'm sure you've probably heard about it too. And so our response is to remain calm, to have a plan, and to take action. We cannot back down on expanding voter rights every time somebody threatens them. We prepare, we readjust, and we get strategic, because you know what? No matter what method we use, we know that there are people out there who want to invalidate people's votes, who want to suppress voters, who want to disenfranchise voters. And if we respond every time they say we're going to do it this, it's like whack-a-mole, right? I mean, so one thing pops up, you squash it, it pops up somewhere else. We, mail-in ballots, the post office. Oh my God, what do we do about the post office? We don't just not do mail-in ballots. We knew that down the line there would be other options for how to drop off mail-in ballots. That's happening now. And we cannot change course every single time we feel that somebody is going to take our rights away, because when we do that, they win. That is the goal, is to scare people into not voting a particular way, to make them afraid of it, to make it harder to vote, and we cannot let them win. We know what the consequences of our actions are going to be, that there is going to be a hard struggle for these votes to be counted. We know that they will be challenged, and we know that no matter what anybody does, votes will be challenged. So we cannot just redirect our plan every time. Instead, we look closely at our plans, we make strategic action, and we take action accordingly. And so I recommend it, because it is so anxiety provoking to read the news, and it is so extremely frightening to think about our right to vote and people's right to vote just being diminished left and right, challenged left and right. I am combating this by watching less news. I am reading fewer articles. Instead of opening up the news, I am subscribing to a daily news update. I like City and State because it gives me information about voting. And I am really selective about what I read. I do not sit down and read the entire paper. I do not sit down and watch the news. I don't have time to do that, because instead I'm taking action. I'm taking action to contact voters. I'm taking action to organize volunteers to contact voters. And that is how we have to spend our time. And if this works for me, it can work for anybody, because I'm telling you, my capacity for anxiety is enormous. Like, I do have drugs for anxiety in my medicine cabinet. Like, anxiety is sort of my default method of behavior. So I think if I can combat the anxiety and the fear, I think anybody can. And so we need to remain calm. I know a lot of people were talking about deep breathing at the beginning, getting a good drink, going to an AA meeting, taking a walk, and then figure out how to spend your time so that we cannot let people win who are trying to take away our rights, so that we cannot let misinformation win, so that we are talking to voters and we are telling them the truth. We're giving them information on how to vote, and we are giving them support around voting. So we need to start doing this now. The old model of election day being one day on November 3rd and GOTV, get out the vote, leading up to that being like 4 days or a week, that's totally out the window. Like, ballots are being mailed out now. Early voting is starting next week. GOTV is 6 weeks long. It's not 1 week. Election day is not 1 day. It is 5 weeks. So we need to shift our thinking. If you are making plans for what you're going to do on election day, that means you're making your plans for what you're going to do the next 6 weeks, because the next 6 weeks is election day. People are voting during the next 6 weeks. And if you're saving up your energy for the final push of this election cycle, it's now. This is the final push of the election cycle. So this is how we are mobilizing voters. This is how we're taking action. We know that ballots are going to start arriving in the mail, and we are going to be tracking down and calling every voter who has requested a ballot to make sure they know how to complete it correctly, to make sure they understand their vote will only be counted if it is in the inner secrecy envelope, to answer any questions they have about how to mark and return their ballot so they know where they can do it safely, and that they need to do it as soon as possible. How do we do this? Just as we're able to check in the state database, any individual, is they can look up their name and see what their status is. Have they applied for a mail-in ballot? Was the application processed? Has the ballot been sent? We have access to all of that information for every voter in Pennsylvania. So we can make lists of voters in the neighborhoods that we're reaching out to, and we can start talking to those voters and saying, hey, I know that you're on the list. I saw that your ballot was sent out. You're going to be receiving it in the mail soon. Here's what you need to do, and here's how I can help you. That is chasing. That is chasing the ballot. And we need to chase every single ballot that has been sent and will be sent to voters. The next thing that we're doing to mobilize, and we've already had one phone bank on this already, so thank you volunteers who were on our Sunday phone bank inaugurating our early voting phone banking. We are contacting as many voters as we can who have not applied for a mail-in ballot, and letting them know that it's possible to do early voting in person at one of the early voting sites around the city. This is hugely enormous for people who work, essential worker. I think of my cousin. She works in a hospital. She works a 12-hour shift. It's really hard to get to vote on a Tuesday if you're working a 12-hour shift. It can be really hard to get to vote on a Tuesday if you are taking kids to daycare, picking them up, and getting to and from work. It can be really hard to get to vote if you don't have anybody to look after your children while you're at home. There are so many reasons why it can be really hard to get to vote on one day. If you need a ride to the polls and your niece can drive you, but she can't drive you on a weekday when she's working, this is the ability to vote any day of the week is enormous. It is an enormous expansion of rights for voters and access to the ballot. And so we're going to be contacting voters in the areas that we're working. We started working in Fairmount. We thought it would take us like a month or a month and a half to complete Fairmount. We like breezed through it. We have volunteers that are working so quickly and furiously. The more volunteers we get on board, the more we expand. So then we expanded to Center City. all of Center City, the entire 8th Ward and much of the 5th Ward. We have been doing phone banking about mail-in ballots. Now we are expanding northward from Poplar Street up to Lehigh, west of Broad Street. So we need more volunteers to expand our capacity. We're going to be calling that location about early voting. So we're going to have concurrent phone banks happening. We're going to be doing chase phone banking to people who have already requested ballots. And we're also going to be doing early voting informational phone banking to those who have not yet requested. So informational is really key. If you are not a phone banker and you don't enjoy phone banking, this is a different kind of phone banking. Our phone banks are informational. We are not persuading people about candidates. We're not pushing people to do anything. We're providing people with information, and most people are really glad to receive it because this is a confusing election and people want to know what to do and where to go. So currently we have 3 phone banks a week. These are the times they're held. We might add a Wednesday evening shift and a Sunday afternoon shift to accommodate doing both ballot chasing and early voting at the same time. Most of our phone banks will be done, well, they'll all be done over Zoom. Most of them will be done using the open phone bank style that we've been using. A few of them are going to be using the dialer. So I want you to go to our URL right now. It's fairmountvotes.com/shift signups. I think Matt is putting it in the chat right now, so you can just click on that link. I would like everybody who is on this call right now to sign up for 3 phone banks. The next 4 phone banks that we're doing are going to use something called an auto dialer. If you are not really technically savvy, this might not be the right phone bank for you. So if you're more of a low-tech person, you should have the next phone bank that you sign up for be our, Matt, what would that be, our Thursday phone bank?
Yeah, that would be the Thursday, next Thursday's phone bank will be the first one that we go back to the regular style.
Yeah, but if you're not concerned about technology, please just sign up for whatever dates work for you. And I want to see people starting to put the number 3 in the chat once you've signed up for 3 phone banks. If you signed up for more than 3 phone banks, put the number that you have signed up for. You can do our regular phone banks through an iPad, but not the dialer phone banks, right? So the next 4 phone banks, so tomorrow, Thursday, Saturday, and next Tuesday, you can't do through an iPad, but all of them after that, you can. So Matt, can you check the dates for the first, is Thursday, October 1st, the next regular phone bank?
Yeah, so we will be back to the standard self-dialing phone banks on Thursday, October 1st.
Okay, Daniel signed up for 6. Daniel is so super stellar. Where's Charles? Charles, you got to be on here too. I know Charles has phone banked 15 phone bank shifts for us, and I think Daniel is right behind him at 14. Heather just signed up for 3. Grace just signed up for 3.
Jill asked a question, if you haven't done a dialer before, can you do it? Absolutely. As long as you're comfortable on a computer, you have reasonably good reflexes, and you are willing to learn, we can train you.
We are doing, we're going to be sending out instructions beforehand on all of our phone banks. We have tech support, so we have somebody who can provide one-on-one support for you. Thank you, Carol Thompson, who signed up for 5. Okay, do people pick up the phone? I'm nervous about phone banking. Yes, we have about a 10% conversation rate. About 10% of the people pick up the phone. One thing that's very different about our phone banking, this won't happen on the dialer on the next 4 phone banks, but typically on our phone banking, we leave voice messages. This is not usually what campaigns do, because they're trying to like talk to a voter and persuade them and find out, are you going to vote for my candidate or not? But we leave voice messages because we know that people listen to them and are taking action based on the voice messages that we leave. We think of the voice messages as like a public service announcement, but just to like an individual in their voicemail. This election is so confusing. And if you have a voicemail that you can come back to, rewind, replay, hear what you need to, figure out like what site did they tell me about? Okay, what website do I have to go to? We know that people are using the voicemails. We leave our hotline number. When we leave a voicemail, we tell people what our hotline number is, and we get a ton of people who call us back on the hotline number with additional questions. So yes, if you are nervous about phone banking, this is the phone banking to do, right? Our phone banks are like, we have people saying like, I've never phone banked before because I'm really nervous about it. And they've said this was so much easier than I thought. So, okay. Next, Matt's gonna go over just some links and resources, and then we're gonna dive into Q&A.
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning, everything, the recording, the slides, everything will be available on our website as of tomorrow morning, because the video can't be up when it's being recorded. So we will update it and put everything up there tomorrow. We'll send out a recap email with links and slides and everything that you need to know. And so if you have any questions that aren't going to be answered yet, or you think of anything after we end today's session, check back. It may be on the website, and that should be good. So now we'll move on to questions, and I have a list of a lot of good questions that people have been asking.
Oh, good. Can I answer real quickly, because we were just talking about phone banking? I saw Carrie asked if there will be instructions. We are providing, at every phone bank, we have a half an hour training. The first 5 minutes of it is an update for returning phone bankers. So you get an update, and if you know our system, you just hop off and start calling. If you're a first-time phone banker or you need help, you want a refresher, we walk through and train you on every phone bank. And then we also have a tech support person who can answer questions one-on-one for you, or go into a Zoom breakout room. Our phone banking happens through Zoom. So we're all connected on Zoom. And then once we start making calls, everybody's muted and you can see everybody making calls, and we can leave messages in the chat. Yeah.
Two things I just want to shout out. One, Nini, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, has the exact best response that I've ever seen for how you overcome social anxiety on the phones. I really hate phone banking, but I hate voter suppression more. I mean, that's it, right? You got 6 weeks. In the middle of November, we can all take vacations maybe and curl up in bed, but not just yet. This is the time. So why don't we dive into questions? Let's see, what if you don't receive your inner secrecy envelope after your ballot comes, or when you receive your ballot in the mail?
Call us. We will get you an inner secrecy envelope.
Question on the naked ballots. If folks put their ballot instructions as well as the ballot itself in the envelope, is it still counted? That's been seen a few times.
I do not know. I will ask that question. It's a great question, and get back to you.
And then there was some earlier questions about signatures. If the person has had a stroke or disabled, can they write an X? I thought we were supposed to write the signature the way we always do. I'm registered, with first name, middle initial, last name, but my signature on file is first name, initial, and then last name. So signature matching questions.
So signature matching, the way that your ballot is sent to you, the barcode sticker, do your name as it is there. If you're registered as like T. Sandra McQuay, then T. Sandra McQuay is how you will sign it, not Sandy McQuay or Sandy T. McQuay. Do it in the order that it is written on there. If you need help signing your ballot, there is a declaration. So there are 2 sections to the declaration form. So This is crazy. Absentee ballots and mail-in ballots are the exact same ballot, right? So the ballot that you are requesting for somebody who has a disability or needs assistance is the exact same ballot that everybody gets in the mail. And one side of the declaration is for people who need assistance signing their ballot. And I don't remember the exact instructions. I did help a couple who are both visually impaired to do this last election. And I remember that they were only able to mark an X. And then I think they put their ballots through my mail slot, and I signed the witness as like, yes, they did this. It was like this massive COVID separation operation, and I know, and assistance. There is a way that if you can only mark an X, that somebody can witness that we made it work. It is doable. And the instructions, which I don't quite remember, will be on the envelope. And if you're confused about it, call our hotline.
A number of people ask, can you drop a ballot off for somebody else at an early voting site?
No. The law is such that you are not allowed to return a ballot for somebody else.
Period. Will there be a volunteer team trying to help folks get to a drop box if they show up at the polls with their ballot?
On election day?
Yes.
Yes. So a couple of different ways that could work. We hope that there would be a great team of election protection folks at every polling location, and that they could say to you, you know what, you need a ride? Let me call someone who can give you a ride to a drop box. We also know that Lyft is providing free or greatly reduced rides on election day, both to polling locations and to drop boxes and early voting sites too. And then lastly, there are some efforts that are coming about that I'm learning about. We'll send more information out to match up people who want to drive and people who need rides. And so that is to get people to early voting sites, rides to early voting sites, and rides to drop boxes. And I cannot imagine that they would not also be helping people get to and from. There are going to be people showing up at the wrong polling location because they've been switched so many times. There are going to be people showing up at polling locations with mail-in ballots that they cannot deposit at the polling location. People are going to need a lot of last-minute rides. The least, there's never a dearth of volunteers to offer rides on election day. Like, it seems to be the default for people who do not like to phone bank. They're just like, I'll just give rides on election day. I don't want to make any phone calls. I don't want to do anything else, but I will give a ride on election day. I have spent so many election days on presidential elections when I'm like managing a site, and there's usually like between 3 and 10 people that are just like hanging out, waiting to give people a ride. We usually have an abundance of people who want to give rides. Like, there's never a shortage of that because there's so many people where that's all they want to do. So don't be one of those people. Make phone calls and give rides.
A number of questions, and I'm going to try and just sort of summarize and generalize them. If you have already applied to vote by mail, we know so many of our volunteers have, we know so many people we've called have, can you still go to the early in-person voting? Can you still, and I guess that's the first half, and then the second is, can you vote in person on election day? So let's do the first half. Can you take your ballot? What do you do if you want to utilize an early voting station? And you've already applied?
If you have already applied, you can take your ballot and drop it off there. If you have already applied, please do not go and say, I'm applying a second time, can you print the ballot off and can I use it right now instead? Because your ballot might already be in the process of being sent to you. So that is not what they want us to use early voting sites for. However, if you have applied to vote by mail and you have something crazy happen, like you open your envelope and there's no ballot in there, or it is well beyond October 10th and your ballot has never arrived. Call us. We'll advocate for you at the Board of Elections, and they will give us instructions about what to do in your individual case. In many of those cases, they will send, like, you can have a replacement ballot, right? But it very much needs to be taken care of on a case-by-case basis. So the protocol is call us or the Board of Elections if you can get through to them. And if they say that you do need a replacement ballot, ask them, can I go to an early voting site and get that replacement ballot there? But don't just show up for a replacement ballot. Call first, make sure that you fit into the category of being able to get a replacement ballot, and then it is likely that you will be able to go there to get your replacement ballot. And if you haven't applied to vote by mail, go there and vote.
And if you have applied and you want to vote on election day on the machines?
Bring your ballot and the outside declaration envelope with you to the polling place. You'll hand it to the clerk, tear it in half, void it, let you vote on a machine. If you decide, okay, I applied to vote by mail, I want to go vote on a machine, but my ballot never arrived. You cannot just go there and say, my ballot never arrived. I don't have anything to give you. Nope, they'll make you vote a provisional ballot. Not what we want to have happen. So if you have applied for a ballot and you want to vote at a polling location, we have to make sure that you get your ballot in your hand to take with you to the polling location. So again, you would call us and say, my ballot never arrived. I want to go vote in person on November 3rd, and we will help track down a ballot for you so that you have it to take to the polling place with you to be torn in half so you can vote on a machine.
Let's see, what, lots of variations on the same question here. Should people be completing the ballot at home and then going to the early voting location, or should they wait until they get there?
I would recommend completing it at home because we don't really know how crowded that location is going to be. We don't know how overwhelmed the workers will be. I think it is just, I think it would take pressure off of the system to complete it at home, putting it in the inner secrecy envelope, putting it in your declaration envelope, signing it, and then taking it with you. We don't yet know whether or not when you go to an early voting site to drop off your mail-in ballot, will you have to stand in line to be able to do that? Will there just be somebody there who can take it from you? Will they have some kind of box in there to put it in? We don't know that yet. And that might also just change from day to day depending on how busy it is. So I think the best practice would be to complete it at home first and to allow yourself time to go drop it off. I got a question today that I just want to address because it's on the top of my mind about early voting sites. So somebody said, look, I saw this article in the New York Times about like voter intimidation that was happening outside an early voting site in Virginia. Like, what are we going to do about that? What's going to happen at these early voting sites? Could they be sites where voter intimidation is happening, where people are like, they're being challenged, their voter registration is being challenged? Yep, that could happen. And there are plans already in place for that. There will be, on the first week that polling locations are open, there will be trained attorneys at every early, or not polling locations, early voting sites. There will be trained attorneys at every voting site who are doing election protection work. And if needed, we will also have poll observers outside. And if anybody is breaking the law outside, I mean, they have a right to publicly voice their opinion, but if they are breaking the law in the way that they are behaving outside of this early voting office, the district attorney's office will be called, and they will, they're going to know, just like on election day, when they go to a polling location because there's voter intimidation or something untoward happening. So yeah, the district attorney's office will be called.
Question I can answer about the dialer. Are the calls through the computer? I have a company phone and can't use that for phone banking. Yes, so the dialer, basically you call into one number at the beginning of your shift, and then you kind of just set your phone aside and don't touch it for the next 2 hours, and the computer will make all the connections for you. So it's sort of a set it and forget it thing. So you won't be dialing 50 people's numbers using a company phone. Let's see.
However, on our regular phone banks, you are using your own phone. You're using your own phone, and so a caller will see your caller ID. If some people are uncomfortable with that, you can get a Google Voice number if you want to make your calls on. I've never had a problem with just using my own phone and people being able to see who I am.
Yeah. A great question. Do our volunteers, I guess, assume for people doing phone banking, do the volunteers need to live in Philadelphia? No.
No.
We have people, probably everybody's in the US, but people from all over, friends of friends who've been recruited.
I see someone right now who lives in Chicago.
Yeah, we have a merry band of folks who see the opportunity we have in this gigantic swing state and the biggest city in the biggest swing state, and they're jumping on board. So no, the more the merrier. It does not matter where you live as long as you can make the times when we have our shifts. Let's see. Still confused what to do about early voting if we have received a mail-in ballot. I think we covered that one. Is there a known date for when polling location information will be finalized online? I assume that means in-person day of voting.
Yeah.
Place locations.
So legally, the Board of Elections does not have to finalize in-person voting locations until 20 days before the election, which is kind of crazy. We hope that it'll happen before then. There is a basic list that's out now of polling locations, but it's very few of them. I think it's like, I don't know, like 60, 100 of them around the city. I mean, we're aiming to have like 1,700 polling locations around the city. So it's a very small list so far that have definitely been confirmed. And it's most likely the polling locations that house the zones in the primary. Each ward had 2 zones, and they're usually schools, sometimes churches. So I think most of it are those buildings that now will be used to house like 1 or 2 regular divisions. So we will not be combining all of the divisions like we did it in the primary. Each division will stand on its own. Each division will have its own board of poll workers. Each division will have its own polling book. You might be in a building with 4 other divisions, but that doesn't mean that all voters from all 4 of those divisions get processed together, stand in the same line, vote on the same machines. Each division is its own entity.
A number of questions. I don't want to dedicate too much time to this about being a poll worker. I will say, people who want to become, is it too late to become a poll worker? I haven't heard this, that, and the other thing. We did an entire, another one of these great info sessions on being a poll worker maybe 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to throw in the chat the link, if I can get there, to the information that we have, the page that we put together, the video of that. Carol, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's too late to become a poll worker.
It is not too late to become a poll worker. And if you have signed up to be a poll worker, it's not unusual for them to not have returned your call. It is very frustrating when you sign up to be of service and then somebody doesn't return your call or bother to let you know that they even got your application or where you're going to be placed. But that is par for the course. So we recommend that if you have signed up or if you're going to sign up, that you also sign up with the Voter Project. They are advocating on behalf of everyone who signs up for them to get callbacks from the Board of Elections. So it is so frustrating. If you have not heard back from the Board of Elections, that's absolutely typical. It's unacceptable, but it is typical and it's what's happening. I recommend that if you have signed up to be a poll worker, that you also have a backup option in case you do not get called. And one good backup option is Common Cause. They are a national organization, and they run election protection on the day of. They have an election protection hotline. They also have poll observers and poll watchers, and it's a super useful thing to do.
Question of what should someone do if you've accidentally requested an absentee ballot instead of a mail-in?
Nothing. It doesn't matter. It's the exact same ballot.
Let's see, if we requested a mail-in ballot for the primary, do we have to request again for the general election?
Yes, unless you marked off the ballot. There was a box in the primary that said, also send me one for the general. If you mark that off, then you're cool, you're good to go, you don't have to apply again. But if you didn't mark that box, then you do have to apply again. And it's very hard to remember whether or not you marked that box. So the best thing to do is to go to votespa.com/mail ballot status. When you go there, you enter in your information, and if it says unable to find match, that means that you are not on the list to receive a mail-in ballot for the general. If your name comes up, it will show you the date that your application was received, that it was processed, and the status should read pending. That means you are on the list to receive a mail-in ballot. If you have not yet applied for a mail-in ballot, I would ask you to really consider whether or not you are somebody who is able to go to an in-person early voting location, because that takes away the wait time of a ballot being processed, your application being processed, and the ballot being sent to you in the mail. So we're encouraging everybody who has not yet applied for a mail-in ballot to consider whether or not you're comfortable going inside a building to an early voting location and voting that way instead. If you're not, I mean, I wouldn't, I can't, I'm immune compromised, so I don't feel comfortable doing that. In that case, I would apply for a mail-in ballot. And if you need any help doing that, just call our hotline. Karen's on here somewhere. Karen and Shannon have been making fantastic return calls to voters. Matt makes a ton of return calls to voters, and a lot of what we do is help people with their mail-in ballot application. So our hotline is 267-405-3401. We can help anybody anywhere in Philadelphia. So feel free to share that number widely with anyone who has any voting questions at all.
I think we're mostly, I mean, I guess there's a sort of a bottom line question of if you haven't applied for your mail-in, is it preferable to vote in person, early in person, if you don't have health or mobility concerns? Is it safer?
I would say yes. Then you don't have to worry about it being lost in the mail, or you don't have to worry about them rejecting your application because the name on your mail-in ballot application isn't the same as your name on your voter registration card. Any of these pitfalls that we're always having to work around when somebody applies for a mail-in ballot and the application doesn't go off like without a hitch, all of those issues can be resolved right there in person, and you get your ballot and you mail it and you're done. One of the benefits of, I mean, there are many benefits of that to helping the system. It's so much less taxing on the mail system. It's so much less taxing on the Board of Elections. And once you have voted, your name will be removed from every call list in the universe, right? Because currently if you're registered to vote in Pennsylvania, you are you're part of the Department of State voter file. And any organization that uses a database that collects that information can see whether or not you've voted. They can see whether or not you've applied for a mail-in ballot. And so you will continue to be called by organizations, nonpartisan organizations, partisan organizations, the Biden campaign, whoever else. So the sooner you vote, the sooner your phone stops ringing off the hook, if that's any incentive. But yeah, if you don't have mobility concerns or health concerns, then I would really encourage you to vote at one of these early voting sites. So much less taxing to the system, and your vote will just get logged in earlier and will be complete.
I think we are mostly through the questions. Let's see, question from Leslie. If you receive an absentee ballot, can I return it as a mail-in ballot? The absentee requires a declaration be signed. There's no envelope.
So Leslie, why don't you call our hotline and I can
It's a little more complicated.
discuss that with you, because it's the email part that's throwing me, and we can figure it out. So every absentee ballot that is requested and every mail-in ballot that is requested, and to my knowledge, unless you are an overseas voter, they are the same ballot. You will receive the exact same thing in the mail, whether it's an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot. Absentee ballots are a thing of the past, and the only reason why we still have them is because the state constitution has a provision in it saying that people must have access to an absentee ballot. So when mail-in ballots were created, mail-in ballots are available to anybody for any reason. You don't need to have an excuse to use it. We really are just all using mail-in ballots now. Absentee ballots are kind of like a relic of the past. They're sort of a ghost that exists, but it is physically the same ballot as a mail-in ballot. Let's see.
Sorry, I think we're mostly...
So it was overseas. Great. Okay, you're gonna stump me, Leslie. I'm gonna have to call the Board of Elections about you with your email overseas question. So thanks for that one. Let's see. Other questions?
That's mostly it that I'm seeing. Questions about where you can see a sample ballot. We will include a link for that in our resources. It varies by, sometimes by ward or by precinct, so there's not one generic one, but I will send you a link.
I'm kind of scanning this. I saw a question from Bettina, or maybe a comment about nursing homes. It's true, like a lot of polling locations that were in nursing homes will no longer be used as polling locations anymore. So what happens to people living in those facilities where it's harder for them to be able to vote? So I was talking last week with a nonpartisan voter support organization, and they were considering doing a program where they would be... It's hard to even get into a lot of nursing homes now because of COVID. There are like just very strict regulations, but they were thinking of doing a program. It's not a volunteer program. It would be a staffed program where they are connecting with activities directors at nursing homes, dropping off applications for mail-in ballots, receiving the applications, processing them, making sure that voters are able to vote. Let's see. Somebody said, is it better to vote in person on election day if we feel we can do so safely? That is a really subjective question and answer. And it's one that's fluctuating. If we can do so safely, I think that largely depends on what safety looks like in November 3rd. I think that we're currently in somewhat of a lull as far as COVID cases here in Philadelphia. I think they're rising in Pennsylvania, but here in Philadelphia, they've been staying steady. I consider this a sweet spot to be in. Like, I think it's like the carpe diem moment of COVID right now because we're staying steady. Would you feel safe on November 3rd? It depends on what November 3rd looks like. So, we do encourage people to vote early, but we're not discouraging people. Like if somebody's adamant about going to the polling place, go for it. Okay. I think that's all.
I think we're mostly good. So if there's any remaining questions, feel free to send us an email. And just know that some of your questions will be answered by the slides and the links and the info that we're going to send out tomorrow.
Bettina also asked another question. I don't know who you are, Bettina, but I dig you. You ask good questions. Will there be a summary of this information that can be shared? Because there's so much misinformation and questions on social media. That is a great question. And so I think that we will probably, so this like simple 1-page website that Matt made today, maybe it will have 2 pages or 3 pages. It may have a Dropbox location page added to it. And I think we probably should add a page to it where we have very like a very condensed version of like the most important things that people can go to, so that like if you're active on social media, that you can combat misinformation with accurate information. And you don't have to like sift through our slide presentation or listen to this whole recording. So, yeah.
Erica's question is the most timely one. What's next after this meeting? What's next? Tonight's Monday night. Tomorrow is Tuesday night. We have a phone bank. Thursday night we have a phone bank. Saturday we have a phone bank. That's what's next. It's not super complicated. It's just repetitive. So we would love to have, we have a ton of people who've already signed up. We would love to have more people sign up. We will have another information session some number of weeks from now and some number of weeks before the election to discuss just how things have changed, because they are changing quickly. But right now it's just make a plan and take action. And we are providing a good set of actions with our phone banks.
And it's also really hard right now because everybody is so socially distanced, and it's like, okay, I take action now online. It's not like we have an office or we're not working out of somebody's house where we can like all kind of see each other and like feed off of each other's energy of like, what's next, what's happening now. That's hard. So like, feel free to reach out to us and email us, fairmountvotes@gmail.com. You don't have to live in Fairmount. You can live across the country, doesn't matter. Feel free to reach out to us and be like, I want a phone bank, but I'm nervous about it. Tell me more. Or ask anything. There is, I think one thing that's nice about our phone banks is that they're done over Zoom. So you start to recognize people from week to week, and there's like opportunity to converse afterwards. So yeah, but that's what's next. It's really simple. What's next is reaching out to voters so that they have the correct information, and that's done through phone banking.
All right, well, why don't we wrap it up there? If you haven't already, fairmountvotes.com/shift sign up. And thank you all for coming. Thank you for your time, and we will see you soon.
Yes, one more question. Sorry, I can't stop. Grace had a good question. If you're using a Dropbox, does it need to be in the county you're registered in? Yes, it does, because it is being collected by that county's Board of Elections. So Montgomery County, their workers from their Board of Elections are going to get all their Dropboxes because they count all of their envelopes. Philadelphia Board of Elections is going to collect everything from our Dropboxes and our early voting sites because they count our ballots.
All righty. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.